Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert, and welcome. This is the live stream where we talk about side hustles. And if you are someone who is wanting to do a side hustle, or you are currently doing a side hustle and you have questions, that's what this is for. If you see me in the stream, go to the chat right next to the stream and say hello and ask a question, because I don't have much of a plan today. I just go off questions and I try and help people as much as I can. So while we are waiting for the questions to roll in, a couple of things. I'm going to talk about the failure of the Silicon Valley Bank today, just to start things off. But before we get into that, just a reminder, this is the latest video on my channel. So if you haven't seen that yet, go and check that out sometime. And also, as always, if you are looking to learn business, but you want actual business knowledge, not a coffee table book that you see at Indigo or Chapters or any of those big book chains. You want actual business knowledge that you can learn off. Check out this. It's my course, the $100 MBA, link in description. Teaches you everything that you would learn in an MBA. And I have a Master's of Business Administration myself. But you don't feel like you can spend 5 figures and go back to school for 2 years full time. This is a good alternative, and it's a solution for some people. Let's get into this. So, it's kind of funny because the hot item in the news is the failure of SVB, the Silicon Valley Bank. And that's this thing right here, right? Bank fails, people panic, everybody has an opinion suddenly. And I think it's hilarious because a couple of things. First of all, what's the question they always ask? They always ask in the media. The question is always, should I panic, right? Whenever there's a bank failure. And no matter what the reality is, the answer always comes back, oh, no, you should never panic. Oh, everything's perfectly fine. It's so hilarious. They're never, ever going to say, oh, yeah, you totally panic. This is bad, right? They're never actually going to say that because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you get people to panic and you get people to pull their money and move it around and all this, it's going to cause a problem, right? Or it's going to exacerbate a problem that already exists. So no matter how bad things get, they're always going to say, oh, everything's perfectly fine and you shouldn't do anything. Don't worry about it. I think it's hilarious. Speaking as somebody who has got a master's degree in finance, I think it's hilarious. And it speaks directly to something that I've touched on this channel a few times, including, I think, the last episode, which is that in the startup world, which is kind of related to the world of side hustles, right? Side hustles are kind of like a really scaled down version of doing a full-born startup, especially an innovative startup. Something I've always advocated for, and I've gone very much against the grain, is that you should not spend vast quantities of money. Okay, this is a fallacy. This is the Silicon Valley mentality, leading you to believe that the first thing you need to do is spend your life savings, borrow a ton of money, okay, and then spend it on a lot of things right off the bat. That's what they would have you believe is the way to do a side hustle or a startup or a small business, right? Incorrect. And this is what we're seeing right now with the failure of the Silicon Valley Bank. Forgetting about the whole banking thing, okay, and the world of banking and regulation and all that kind of stuff. If you look at it from the startup perspective, it's like, this is a problem. This is a symptom of the problem of a lot of startups, that they go out and they borrow a ton of money and they're running on extremely thin margins. Like their payroll for next week is financed essentially by a loan, So if you don't make money this week, you won't be able to pay the interest on your loan kind of situation. I mean, this is the problem. There are financial rewards for being eyeball deep in debt, assuming nothing goes wrong. Of course, the trade-off is risk. The trade-off is, being able to have a reserve and be insulated against things not going your way or developments happening, right? And the problem is, what do we see in certainly the world of banking, certainly in the world of startups, is that people throw caution to the wind and they bet the farm on everything unnecessarily, and they don't have any cash reserves, put it that way. And this is what you get. And it's funny because a lot of rich people, are just like looking at this, and they're not expressing opinions, they're not commenting on it, they're silent as always, and they know that stuff comes up and stuff comes down, and it's only a matter of time before things bounce back, and they're not panicking over it. But it's just funny to see the reactions of the world. And the other thing that's relevant here is if you're thinking of doing a side hustle, what you need to know is that there's a lot of vested interest from the financial services industry to sell you a loan, okay? If you are a small business owner or an entrepreneur or a startup founder, there's a lot of people who work at financial institutions as part of their sales and marketing operations that will love to give you a loan, okay? And obviously they do this because they make money off it. And what's happened in the last few years is that a lot of these entities like banks and things, or lenders that target entrepreneurs and startup founders and small business owners, they have special products, meaning different types of loans with different conditions, that are targeted specifically to entrepreneurial types of people, because what they do is they structure the terms of the loan in such a way that, even if you're incorporated, normally that would insulate you against financial loss if, your business fails. They write into the terms and say, in order to get this loan, you have to make a personal guarantee, which means that whether your business or your side hustle or your small business fails or not, like if it succeeds or not, you still have to pay back the loan from personal funds. This is how slimy this is. So they have absolutely no interest in whether the thing they're lending you money for, your business or your side hustle or your startup, whether it succeeds or not. They don't care, because essentially they're getting paid regardless. That's the idea, And these things, in my experience, in my observations, what I've seen with other people and what I've had some dealings with clients and things, it's bad. It's supposed to be this good thing for the economy, depending on what country you're in. It's supposed to stimulate the economy, encourage people to do startups and side hustles. It doesn't. It ramps up your financial risk. It makes the whole thing super risky. And if you don't succeed, not only do you, lose the money you sunk into your business, you have all your time wasted, and, it's stressful, but you then have to pay back these loans from your personal funds. Stupid. It's dumb. And I created a little thing here. It's dumb. Dumb with a capital B. Okay, that's what the whole thing is. So I just want to say that. This is, when I look at this item in the news about SBT, Silicon Valley Bank failing, it reinforces a lot of things that I've been saying on this channel. It's like, don't take personal financial risks to do this. It's a risky business. Do an idea that doesn't require a ton of money to get off the ground. And if you just exercise your brains a little, you can come up with an idea that doesn't require a ton of cash to get off the ground. That's the idea. Okay, so going over to you guys, there are 25 of you here. Thank you for being here. That's awesome. You guys are all awesome. We're here to do some self-improvement. Let's go to the chat. So Victoria A says, I'm definitely having a hard time finding a job right now. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, Victoria. Now, that's one of the paths that can lead to a side hustle, okay? For example, trying to tie this to the whole world of getting a job, okay? A lot of people ask me, what do I do if I have no experience? What do I do if nobody looks at my resume and is impressed by my experience? What can I do to prove myself, to show that I have skills, that I have value, so that when I do a job interview, they will value me? And one of the things you can do if you're between jobs right now and you have some time on your hands is you can do something that resembles a side hustle, okay? And I say that in the sense that, like what I just said, you shouldn't need a lot of money to start. You shouldn't need any money. There's a lot of things you can do that you don't need essentially any money to get off the ground. Assuming you have an internet connection and a computer, okay, you can do a lot of things. I mean, like, let's go to the cliched examples that are the absolute basics. Things like publishing articles, okay? If you are, I don't know, you are someone who has a career in a certain industry. I don't know, let's say, I don't know, wastewater processing, sewerage processing, okay? You are, a sewerage type person, you work in wastewater, right? And you're looking for a job in that industry, but there are no takers right now. It doesn't look very promising. A lot of people, they look at your experience, they see you don't have a lot of experience, and so they're unconvinced that you could really hack it in those roles. Well, if you're out of work for a while, what you can do is you can start doing something on the side that has to do with your desired industry, which is wastewater, okay? And so that you have something or something else to put on your resume, you can actually do something. And the absolute basic thing you could possibly do would be to publish articles on it, okay? So you go into groups on social media, you publish, little articles or posts on wastewater, trends in the wastewater industry, things like this. You start getting people that see it, you start getting visibility, you get comments, all this kind of thing. You could even go and do some public speaking, and like for free in the beginning, on wastewater at various events and various things that are happening in your town, things like this. Like, it's something you're doing yourself, okay? And this is maybe not the world's greatest example, but it illustrates how, like, instead of just sitting and doing nothing and applying for jobs, you can actually do something, okay, in an industry. Now, if you were to ramp it up to the point where you're actually selling something, okay, I'm selling my consulting services on wastewater, or, I don't know anything about the wastewater industry. If there's some little product or service, that you could do, very simple, probably a service. Usually services are a lot cheaper to get off the ground, that you can do. Then you can not only put that on your resume and say, like, look, I have experience in this industry. I've done this, I've done that, I've done that. I've interacted with people in the industry. I've gotten customers for this service. I provided this service in this industry. I know how these people think. I know what they look for. You have stuff you can talk about that shows that you have value. You're not trying to get them to believe you have value. You are demonstrating you, in fact, have value because you've done it. Okay, so that's one aspect of this. Emerald says, I really need advice on this topic. Now, what topic are you talking about? Are you talking about side hustles? Or are you talking about financing a side hustle? Or are you talking about the whole getting a job thing? We're not really talking about getting a job today. This is mainly for side hustles. But if you could let me know, Emerald, I'd be happy to speak to specifically what you're wondering. Doc Holiday 985 says, offer some free work for the type of work you are going for to pad that resume with experience. Yes, if you have certain skills, that's something you can do. You can offer your skills as a service, okay? For some things, that will make sense. Other things, it won't really make sense, but maybe you could talk about it. You could consult on it. You could write articles on it, things like this. You could make YouTube videos on it, whatever. It's possible to do the work yourself, do that kind of work without needing anyone's permission, like an employer, to do the work in that business. Okay? So, yeah, and one of the most obvious things you can do at the very, very least is that you can put it on your resume and go that route. Bill Price says, thanks for your channel. It's awesome and I have learned a lot. How do you take your skills and experience from your resume and turn it into a side hustle? Excellent question, Bill. Excellent question. Now, obviously, the precise details depend on the industry you're in and the type of thing you're wanting to do. But, okay, you generally have two options. Okay, products and services. Usually, when you're generalizing like this, there are exceptions, but usually services are the easiest to do yourself, okay? So if you have skills in, I don't know, you have, like, let's break it down to the basics, okay? A component of practically every job, okay, is some form of communication skills. Okay, whether you have good written skills, you can write reports, or good verbal skills, you can do public speaking, like you can chair a meeting, you can present to a room full of people, you can do a briefing. Okay, like today. Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to explain how this works. Okay, this new idea. So, like, for example, if you worked in safety, I don't know, just as an example, one of the things you would be doing usually in that role is some form of briefing, like public speaking, where you get up and even if you're telling like a group of employees what the safety hazards were or what the updates to the safety rules are or explaining the rules to people, things like this, it involves a lot of interpersonal communication. So the question is, how can you turn that into a side hustle? Well, the obvious thing would be like, okay, I provide consulting services for safety. There are a lot of smaller businesses out there, businesses with 10 people in it, that don't have a dedicated safety person, but they're growing, they're getting bigger and bigger, and they're at the point where like, okay, now we need to start taking safety seriously, but none of us has a safety background. So, we can't really afford a full-time employee. But maybe to just get us started with this, we could bring somebody in. Let's pay somebody, an hourly rate to come in and advise us what we have to do. Tell us, if we need to get a safety program together, what kinds of things we would need, right? So that could be you. If you have some skills in the world of safety, you would be able to help them with that. You could offer your services there. You could publish articles about it. That would get the awareness out, possibly do posts about it on the internet. Also you could, I don't know, I'm just doing this off the top of my head. You could order catalogs of all these safety equipment. Like if a company wants to buy safety equipment, like hard hats and reflective vests and all this kind of stuff, personal protective equipment, signs that go on the wall that say safety first or mind the gap or, whatever. Those all come in a catalog. So what you could do is you could provide a consulting service to companies and say, look, you want to get set up with safety. You want me to come in and do an audit, or you want someone to provide you with all the materials. You don't know where to look for them. You don't know what you need. I can do that. So, I'm just doing this off the top of my head. These are probably not the world's greatest examples, but, that kind of thing. Okay. That's how you can start. And then I don't know how you would do a product company in the safety business. Maybe you take a well-known product that's available and you adapt it for use in a particular industry. So we were talking about wastewater before. The problem is in the wastewater industry, you need to put signs on the walls, you need to have special equipment, but the problem is you need to put that equipment in an environment where there's corrosive chemicals and it's a hostile environment. There's vibration, there's a lot of dirt. What you do is you take the signs and you take the equipment that you can buy, that anybody can buy, and you weatherproof them, you fortify them, you laminate them, you beef them up, and then install them in the facility, something like that. So if you know about that, that's a service you can provide. And it's also like tied to a product that, that they get through you. Okay, so, this is just food for thought. Hopefully that helps. But good question, Bill. Jose says, hi from, is that Venezuela? Venezuela. Capital Caracas, isn't it? Venezuela, Caracas, if I'm not mistaken. Hey, let's do this together, okay? This is a total good use of this time. Capital of Venezuela. Caracas. There you go. Right on. Okay, good. I'm right. I like being right. It doesn't happen too often. TQ. I have years of corporate experience, but now between jobs, but now I'm between jobs. Thinking of going back to school to finish a business admin degree. Is it worth the time and money in this economy at this point? Well, that is unanswerable, unfortunately, TQ, because it depends on what your goals are, okay? For some people, it will not make sense, okay? Depending on what their goals are, what their talents are, what their background is, and what their financial situation is, okay? But for other people, depending on those things, it will be a good idea and it will make sense to do right now. Okay, there isn't a blanket yes or no answer that fits everyone on that one. Now, if you've started a business admin degree, personally, the way I think is that like you should capitalize, unless there's a really compelling reason not to, that you're not mentioning, you should, and you've already invested, you've already done some courses or something. I would go back and finish it so you have something to show for it. But that's just me. Others may use different approaches, And I would say that generally speaking, learning business is a good thing because it will benefit you in many ways over many years for the rest of your career and indeed the rest of your life. Okay, learning things like marketing, learning things like finance, they are valuable skills that influence how you live your life. Okay. Certainly, if you want to get into the world of like doing side hustles or maybe even a full-blown startup or having a small business, definitely you'd want to get that knowledge, okay, in some way, shape, or form. And as an alternative, if you're really not into the whole idea of going back to school, but you still feel guilty about it, you can always take my course, right here. I had to put that in there. But yeah, that's why I created my course. You want the knowledge, but you don't want the big capital outlay of spending thousands of dollars and taking years of full-time study. You want to just do it as you go for a little amount of money. That's what I created my course for the people that have that specific need. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense, TQ. That's the best I can sort of give you in like 5 minutes, but it's something you should definitely consider, especially if you've already put in some time and effort to it. Lino Walker says, I accidentally started a second side hustle as an SEO expert. Oh, right on. When I landed my first client, I felt extremely awkward making my first offer, asking for money for something I think is easy to do. Well, congratulations, Lino Walker. You are taking your steps into a new world, right? And that's a big, big step is when you finally do something for money. Okay? You can put stuff out there for free. Maybe people see it and it helps them, or maybe it doesn't. But once you sort of play in the big leagues, as it were, and you're like charging for your services, okay, it validates you in a whole different way. Now your challenge is going to be to provide value for this person, okay? Now, just to share a story with you, a long time ago, one of my very, very first experiences with consulting as an independent consultant, okay? I had to charge an hourly rate that was sort of consistent with people in the industry that do like management consulting and things. And at the time, like a lot of people, when you start something new, I felt a little bit like an imposter, and that like, oh, I'm charging all this money, I don't know if I can deliver that kind of value. And one of my first experiences, like my first client, and I can't remember, it was like the second, third, fourth meeting, something like that. I advised them not to do something. Okay. They were wanting to do something. They were wanting to hire a contractor to do some work for them. And they explained the situation to me. And I had advised them, I said, like, look, based on what you've told me, I advise you not to do that for this reason. Okay. Now they ended up not listening to me. And they went and they hired this contractor and they went down that path. It failed. It cost them a lot of money. It cost them like $50,000, $100,000, so somewhere in there. And I was thinking about it later. I didn't tell this to them. You like my grammar? Very professional. I didn't mention this to them, but I did a sort of calculation just in my head. And I was thinking like, okay, so I charged you this much money, okay, for my advice. And because you didn't take it, you then went out and it cost you this much money because you didn't listen to me. Now, obviously, I'm worth the money because if you had listened to me, you could have avoided spending essentially 10 times as much. So, that's where you start to see, like, I do have value. And, if you're struggling with that, like, what do I charge? It's a service. It's kind of abstract. It's intangible. What is it worth? and there's many different ways of coming up with a pricing scheme. That's something to think about, the value-based pricing. What would it cost them if they didn't go through you and they went through some other service? What are they saving by going to you, and what are you saving them from? Okay, so that's maybe a way to look at it that helps you get some idea. But I agree with you. It's a very big, it's a milestone step when you start charging for your services, especially if you start off doing it for free to get some recognition and get some experience. Then you start charging. Thank you for sharing that with us, Lina Walker. WCK champion, my compadre. We're like this. You couldn't even see what that was. It was like that. We're like this, okay? WCK champion. It looks like my question was skipped. Did I kindly miss anything? Yeah, I don't see any earlier question from you, so if you could ask it again, I'd be happy to take it. TQ says, makes total sense. Thank you. That was finishing your admin, business admin thing. Yeah, that's what I have to say. We've reached the end of the questions, so if you have any questions, there's 21 of you here today. Go and ask some questions. I will be here for another few minutes, and then I have to get rolling. But Lina Walker says, thank you for the answer. It's an absolute pleasure, Lina Walker. Thank you for the question. Yes. This is the thing. Coming back to the whole bank failure that's in the news today. Yeah, it's like, here's another sort of piece that relates to this, okay? A lot of things that people this is something, God, I can't talk today. This is something that a lot of people don't realize, okay? Big companies are here to solve big problems. Small companies, the type of thing that you could do for a side hustle or a startup or a small business, small companies are here to solve small problems, okay? That's how this stuff works. That's what the economy supports. If you are a small company or you want to start a small company, but you want to take on a big problem, that's usually an area where we run into a lot of trouble, okay? That's usually an area where you end up believing that you have to spend your life savings and borrow a ton of money on top of it because you're tackling a big problem, right? And that's what the financial services industry and other people with vested interests would want you to believe and how they want you to think, okay? Now, I'm not saying you can't take on big challenges. Of course you can. But be very careful what challenges you take on. Small businesses, like one-person businesses, exist to handle small problems. So you can make a lot of money and you can really reduce your risk if you take on a small problem, a legitimate problem, but it's a small problem. You offer some consultation, you provide a service that helps a specific group of people with a specific thing. You sell a product, it's not a space age product that uses new technology to be able to build. It's something that's small, manageable, doable, but it works and it does solve a problem. It is a solution that works very, very well considering the alternatives out there, right? So think in terms of that stuff. Suzanne Price says, can you speak to the gig economy and whether it's on the rise? Yes. Well, first of all, it is on the rise. And gig economy is the idea that you're doing something, usually contract work. I mean, that's more of like employment as opposed to the world of starting a business, right? But yes, the gig economy is on the rise. It's something that people do. There are many reasons for it. The big reason is that larger organizations who have a very impersonal view of employees, they treat employees like human resources, okay? I don't know if it's the modern take on it, but human resources, like I've said this before, human resources is schizophrenic, okay? They have two completely different ways of looking at employees, and those two ways are fundamentally incompatible, okay? The first way is to look at people as if they are resources. So from a business perspective, You look at things like the inputs for your business. You input, finance, like funding, capital. You input raw materials. You input employees. You input installations, okay, and physical assets. And you get an output, which is a product or a service, and then you make a profit, okay? So if your profits are down this quarter or this month, and you want to cut your costs, you can scale back on inventory, you can scale back on raw materials, you can scale back on energy, like, how much energy, you pay utility bills, and you can scale back on employees. That means you lay off a few people. So you're not treating people like people. You're not treating your employees like human beings. You're treating employees like resources. Your profits are down this month, you lay off a few people, they come back up next month. Right? Like, it's a very impersonal way of treating employees. Okay? So that's a modern view of human resources. That's where its name comes from. It's very, very hard, if not impossible, to reconcile that with the other way that human resources looks at employees, which is the stuff you see on social media, the leadership, how to inspire employees, how to communicate to them. In those areas, you're treating your employees like they're human beings, like they're complex creatures with emotions and goals and aspirations, and they're not robots, right? So this is the problem with HR today, and it has been for about 40 years. It's like, which is it? Are people resources, or are people living, breathing, emotional human beings? And because the field of study of human resources, it's schizophrenic like this. What you see with a lot of businesses is they keep flip-flopping between treating their employees like, okay, you're a robot, you're just, a grunt, you do what we say and we lay you off at our pleasure, to, oh, we need to inspire you and challenge you, and we care what your attitudes are and your goals are, and what your aspirations are and what your strengths are. Right? They keep flip-flopping on this, and that's why you get this psychopathic kind of view of HR that doesn't really make a lot of sense to a lot of people, right? So because they think like that, okay, that has led to things like the gig economy. If they're treating people like resources, let's behave like resources. And, we do work for this business over here, and then they want to lay off people. Well, that's fine, because I wasn't employed permanently. I'm just a contract person. I come in on the peak season and provide additional services. And then on the off season, I go and I work somewhere else, right? And you can diversify what you do so that maybe you provide consulting, maybe you provide a service, and maybe you do different types of work. And this type of work, is more popular in the peak season, and this other type of work is more popular in the off season, right? So it allows you to adapt to the changing needs of the economy. And employers like this, because it ties in with what they want, which is they don't want permanent employees, it's like a fixed cost that you're tied to, right? You always have to pay their salary regardless of if you're making a profit this month or not. That's a fixed cost. Fixed costs mean risk, right? You take on a lot of permanent employees, and you better be making money consistently, or else you'll go bankrupt trying to pay their salaries, or you have to lay them all off. So yes, gig economy definitely has a place. It's thriving right now for reasons that I've stated and other things. So if you're willing to take on contract work, it may seem inferior to being a permanent employee. And yes, it is. But the way you overcome that is you do, you don't just do like gig, like contract work for one employer or one client. You do it for, an array of clients, a portfolio of clients. You do different types of work. You diversify your income streams, and it can be good for you if you go that route. So hopefully that makes sense, Suzanne. And thank you for the question. I have to get rolling in a few minutes. It's been just over half an hour. So I want to thank everyone here for joining me today on Side Hustle Ideas. We didn't talk too much about side hustles today, but But I will be back on Thursday, and we will definitely do it then. We'll get more into the ideas and like what types of businesses can be made successful. We will talk about that and the constituent skills that you need to be able to do it. Okay, so we'll do that on Thursday. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. I will be back tomorrow with a special one-of-a-kind live stream talking about the job interview question, tell me about yourself. It's actually not a question, it's more of a directive. But I got a comment from somebody that asked about that specifically, and it stimulated me wanting to do an entire live stream just dedicated to that question. How to handle it, what are they trying to do, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're interested in that, join me tomorrow at this time, and we'll get into that. Thanks very much, guys. You guys are awesome. I will see you on the next one. Take care.